Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Michael, and we've got a great one for you today. Today, we connect with Ryan Gochenour. Ryan is actually a part owner of Midwest Outdoor Chasers, which is a media company here based out of Iowa. And I basically found him online, and he had a ton of stories to tell, and he did not disappoint. So today you're going to hear some stories from him hunting in the West, doing some elk hunting in Colorado, some turkey hunting and deer hunting in Iowa, and even some crazy boating trips with his father and uncle. So I hope you guys enjoy. It's a good one. Ryan, thank you, of course, very much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate you taking your time. Now let's go ahead and kick this thing off and let Ryan tell you his stories. All right, Ryan. Welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast, man. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome, man. I'm happy to be here. Happy to share some stories.
Absolutely, man. I've already told you I start every episode like this. Everyone knows that, but it took us a couple tries to get this thing scheduled. My fault. I'm glad you're here, man. I'm glad you had patience with me because I'm excited to hear your stories. Just so everyone knows out there, I actually was just playing around on Instagram and I saw a post was like, here's an amazing article of an amazing hunt story. And Ryan was the author. And so I reached out and was like, you know what, man? Don't know anything about this, but let's get you on the podcast. I want to hear your stories. And Ryan was happy to. So, Ryan, why don't we kick this thing off now that I've told the people where I found you with a little bit of who you are.
Yeah. So I'm Ryan Gochenour, born and raised in Southwest Iowa. Missouri Valley, Iowa is where the hometown where I'm from. Just about 20 miles north of the Omaha Council Bluffs area. So kind of nestled down here. I've grown up hunting and fishing all my life. It's been a huge part of who I am. Even decided to create a business with some friends called Midwest Outdoor Chasers, where we kind of highlight everything hunting and fishing here in the homeland, kind of thing. We've got together with a videographer who's put together some killer content for us, and we just really like to highlight everything that we do when it comes to everything outdoors, hiking, hunting, fishing. We get into just kind of everything. Love cooking up wild game. Love sharing that with all of our family and friends. We really love to just highlight everything about it. We're all of us grew up together, minus one. Ben is our videographer who we kind of just met here in the last few years.
Yeah.
But everybody involved in the group, we grew up together. We've known each other since we were 6 or 7 years old. So we all get along real great, and we all like to highlight everything about it.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So you guys are just like a media company at this point, or do you have like other products that you're putting out there?
Just a media company primarily. We do have some merch. We've got some hats and sweatshirts, t-shirts, and some swag. But right now we're just trying to kind of get some content out there, putting out some really cool videos that Ben puts together. And just trying to highlight the aspects of hunting and fishing. And then we also have another aspect of the channel called Primal Plate, where we put together all the game meat that we get throughout the year, and we make some recipes, and we kind of show how to make it and different recipes we come up with and different adaptations that we have.
That's cool. And so you said you've known each other for a long time. Have you always been hunters? Have you hunted your whole life? Okay.
Yes, all of us have all been hunters except for Ben. Ben Mohorn is our videographer, guy behind the camera. Did not grow up hunting. The way that we first met him is bringing him out on a hunt. We did a goose hunt in a field, and he was working with a friend of ours' wife. Word got out that he wanted to kind of he wanted to get out and just film,
experience all that. Oh, he wanted to film. Okay, cool.
He wanted to film a hunt. He just wanted to bring a camera. He didn't want to bring a gun. He just wanted to come out and sit and see what it was like because he'd never been out. So we had him come out with a field hunt for I think a late season January goose hunt in a field, and we didn't end up getting any birds, but I think we got him hooked because he hasn't left our side since. He's a great guy, a fantastic human being, and we're super happy to have him part of the team.
Gotcha, man. Was he a photographer, a videographer by trade, or is this something that was like kind of a new passion of his, and you guys are helping him develop that as long as you guys, or like right alongside you guys developing your organization?
So Ben is a unique human being, and I can't wait for him to hear this because he 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 was raised on a homestead. Uh, I think he went to high school his junior or senior year in public school, but other than that, he was homeschooled. Uh, he he's self-taught with a camera. I mean, he doesn't have any formal training. Everything he does, he's taught himself. So he'd never really been hunting much in his childhood, and then once he started working with our Alyssa, which would be one of the guys in the group's wife, uh, word got out that he really wanted to see what it was like, and we just invited him to come along, and he just fell in love. He's really trying to develop his business into the outdoor media and to try to film and film outdoor content. And his style of filming just it blends so well with the outdoors.
That's awesome.
He captures every essence of the frame, and he's just very impressive.
Very cool, man. Very cool. Well, maybe someday we'll get the rest of the team on the podcast to tell some of their stories, unless you burn some bridges telling your stories that you're going to tell us today, and they don't really want to get involved with you anymore.
Well,
for airing that dirty laundry, right?
Yeah, they're too in deep with me, so I don't think they can get rid of me too easily.
Perfect, Ryan. Well, let's kick things off, man. Let's jump into some stories. I know you got a couple ready up, queued up for us. Why don't you start by just sort of setting the stage? Give us kind of when, where, what, how, or however you feel is the best way to kick this thing off.
Yeah. So like I said, I've been hunting and fishing and doing everything outdoors for a really long time. I hate to admit it when I tell people about it, but when I was a kid, my dad really forced me to be out. Like I never really, I liked it, but I liked it because he liked it. I was more involved, as a teenager, I was more involved with sports and girls at that point in my life.
I think that exact sentence has been uttered on this podcast like 10 times.
I look back and I wish I would have cherished a couple more of those memories with him. Just coming up as a kid, a couple of my most famous hunting memories involved the first kill. I was turkey hunting when I was 8, or my first buck I took when I was 10 or 12. Those memories really stick, and I really wish I would have honed in on that when I had the chance, but you can't change the past. And I've been doing a whole host of hunting and fishing since. If it's walked or ran around Iowa and the Midwest, I've chased it in some fashion. But a couple of my most favorite stories that I like to tell involve actually going out west or near Walden, Colorado, in the Medicine Bow Trail, the Medicine Bow Mountains, I think it's what's called. I've done 2 elk hunts out there, second season rifle. We did a drop camp where they take us up on horseback, leave us for a week, and then come pick us up.
Cool. Very cool.
Hell or high water. Yes, it was a surreal experience both times. The first time that we went out there was 2019. I ended up taking a 5x5, and my dad was able to take a 5x6. It was his first bull since he had been elk hunting in 24 years, and it was my first elk trip, and I got a pretty nice little bull out of the deal.
I bet he's proud of you.
Oh yeah, he hated me for 2 days, and then once he got his, he was pretty peachy with it. And he got a really, really nice bull out of the deal. But out of the 2 trips that we've taken out there, the second trip really sticks out more than anything. It was an absolutely miserable trip. I mean, from the get-go, we got out there, we took off 2 days early. We ran into a snowstorm just north of Denver, so it took us a while to get into Walden. And by the time we got in there, there was 3 or 4 inches in town. And once you get to the lodge, you start talking to some of the locals. They say it's been snowing up on the mountain for a few more hours, and it's just supposed to get worse with the elevation that you go up. So It didn't start out real hot, but once we got up, we got to camp that morning. It was Wednesday morning. We were getting set up, and our guide with Medicine Bow Outfitters kind of was skeptical. Once we got in there, we didn't really know what it was going to be like, and having a drop camp, essentially what it was an Army canvas tent, and they literally take you up on horseback, they drop you off, and then you hunt for 7 days. So there's not a whole lot you can do when you get up there. So
yeah. How far back did these guys take you? Were they taking you 5, 10? How many miles?
I think it was 7 miles.
Okay.
It was
That's
7 miles,
good.
and we were right at about 11,000 feet. I think 10,000.
How many people in your party?
Elevation. We took 1, 2, 3, 5 up. Okay. Stayed with 5. Yeah, because one guy did a guide. He did a guided hunt, and he actually got a cow on the trip. But all 5 of us went and stayed up at the drop camp.
Okay.
So we went out that Wednesday. We left that afternoon, thinking we might as well get up there, because at this point it was still snowing. So we tried to get up there as soon as we could. And I don't do a whole lot of horseback riding. I love it in short spurts. That 7-mile horseback ride took almost 3.5 hours with the amount of snow that was on the ground. And it was brutal on the way up. And we didn't see a ton of tracks. We didn't see many animals. I mean, the snowstorm kind of kept everything down in elevation, and we learned that the hard way once we finally got up there.
I was going to say, I've hunted that same unit, and where I hunt, snow's great news. But I'm hunting a couple seasons later. So go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and I'll talk about that on our first trip too. It snowed on the first few days, and it was great hunting, but it just continually kept snowing on the whole ride up, to the point where when we finally got to camp, it was about 13 inches of snow on the ground. And the entire way I could hear my uncle, who was on the trip with us, talking to the guide, asking him, what do you think the camp's going to be like? Do you think there's going to be any damage to the tent, this, that? And I could tell that the guide was a little uneasy about it, because 13 inches of snow was going to wreck any kind of tent. And once we got up there, it did. The entire the entire tent caved in, tore, and everything inside was just crushed. I mean, it was just, we got up there, and by the time we got up there, it was 6 or 7 o'clock. So it was just at dusk. I mean, it was getting dark. So we kind of had to make that decision to where, we could either ride back down on horseback, get back at about 9, 10 o'clock on another 3-hour horseback ride, or we could load up our gear. We brought a gear tent along. Luckily, we could set up a gear tent, and a few of us could stay in the gear tent overnight while the guides went and hunted down another tent down at drop camp, or down at main camp. So we get there, everybody's kind of hemming and hawing. At this point, there's 5 of us hunting, 3 or 4 ranch hands, and the guide. So we're all trying to salvage what we can from the tent that had collapsed, as far as equipment that was in there. I mean, our wood stove was in there, the bunks that they use, the cots, the little stove that they have, the propane stove that we had to cook with. We tried to salvage what we could. We set up the gear tent, and then my dad, myself, and then my cousin decided that we were going to stay in the gear tent overnight. And my family friend and uncle were going to ride back down the mountain, because the gear tent was only 8 by 8. So it was just enough to fit 3 cots. One of the cots was a bunk bed, and then the other cot we kind of set up, and then we set up a wood stove. So we spent the night in the gear tent, basically nuts to butts on top of each other, just rolling that wood stove for as long as we could. And it was brutally cold. I think that night it got down to -10 or -15, and oof. It sucked, man. It sucked.
Yeah,
it was.
I bet.
And the worst part about it is you go out there and you're so hyped. You know, it's finally here. You're finally ready for the hunt, and you get there, and it's kind of soul crushing. You get up there and realize, well, this you're gonna spend the night in super cold weather. Your hunt's not starting off real hot already.
Yeah, God, I can't even imagine, man. Especially if, like, the very first thing is just shit stick, just hitting you over and over again. That's tough, man.
Yeah.
I'll say I've hunted that same area, and I've had some years where, like, burn bans, right? And so we stayed in a wall tent, the same thing, and we couldn't start a fire. So we got one of those little Mr. Heater buddies, and we went through like 35 canisters. We're like, we're making this thing happen. I don't care how cold it is. We had good sleeping, our sleeping bags, and what we were good there. I think it only got down to like maybe -1 or 2, like right on 0. But man, it was tough to hang out in that tent for too long without just getting into your sleeping bag.
Oh yeah, I think that first night I had a sleeping sock inside my sleeping bag, which was a -20-degree rated sleeping bag, and then I think I had 2 or 3 layers of clothing. We ran a buddy heater, the stove, and I ended up putting some of my hand warmers, breaking those open and shoving it inside my sleeping bag because I was just frozen. It was brutal.
I believe it, man. I believe it.
But I mean, it's fun to talk about now, and that's that's kind of the mentality that I had when I got out there. I was like, this really fucking sucks right now, but this will be fun to talk about 10, 12 years from now. I'll be able to tell my kids about this one day, and they'll ask me how stupid I was to pay for the experience to go out there and freeze my ass off. So it was good. It was good, but it wasn't a good start. Right? Yeah, right. Yeah. But when we first got out there, we spent the night. My wife, this is the second trip that I had taken on this drop camp, and there I don't have great service whatsoever. My wife is not a huge fan of the no contact, and not in like a bad way. She just likes to know that I'm safe. And I kind of pulled a dick move on her. I couldn't get a hold of her that night. So I waited till the morning, and I went to the highest little peak that I could find, and I finally got service. She didn't answer her phone, so I left her a voicemail, and she saved it for when I got back. And I don't know what I think I was huffing and puffing from walking up the mountain, but I got out there and I said, we're fine, but the tent ripped. We got to spend the night in the gear tent, and it's super cold, frosty, and Rod had to go back down the mountain. And then the voicemail ended. So she's just freaking out. So when I finally got back to another spot of service, I just got unloaded on with text messages and phone calls from her because she was so worried about me. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I didn't really mean to put it like that, but we're good.
That's pretty good.
A lot of snow.
Yeah, no, my wife's the same way exactly. I don't know if you've seen with those Garmin InReach. Garmin, if you hear this, hit me up. But they're like this little GPS device. It's tiny and it links to your phone, and you can send text messages just about anywhere. And so like she knows I get like 13 texts a month out of that thing. So she gets one text every evening being like, made it back to camp. And that's all she's going to get from me when I'm hunting. But you know, that's good enough for her. I was like, you'll get something outside of the standard text if anything is going on. Otherwise, you're just going to get that one thing. And so,
and that's what I told her too.
Yeah, it makes her feel a little bit better, especially knowing that there's also an SOS button on those things. I don't know if you've seen them, but
don't tell her about it. She'll find it, and But no, we spent the night in the tent, and it was a pretty brutal night. I mean, it wasn't very fun, and we spent the morning splitting firewood. We thought we were going to be able to go do some scouting, but with that amount of snow on the ground and just the temperatures, we decided to just try and make camp as comfortable as we could, because we were still going to have to be up there for another week. So we spent the morning splitting firewood, kind of salvaging the tent that had ripped up, like whatever we could out of it. And finally, about noon, 1 o'clock, the guide showed back up with my uncle and our family friend, Rod and Frosty. The guide showed up with some horses and some gear, and thank God they had an extra canvas tent down at camp. So we spent most of the day getting everything set up. So day one was spent digging out, getting bearings, and just setting up camp. And that I consider myself a flatland boy. I mean, we have some hills here in Iowa, but for the most part, we're sitting at like 1,000 feet of elevation, and you can see your friend from one side of the state to the other. So when you get up into that elevation, it hit us like a ton of bricks. And every time I go out there, I feel like I can get a handle on it, but it just kicks your ass. So day one,
how do you guys sleep all right? I know a lot of people struggle with that, especially older folks. I don't know if your dad or uncle had any trouble sleeping.
No.
Outside of the fact that it was already freezing.
Yeah, the worst part about sleeping with them is the snoring. The elevation didn't affect me as much. I had to take earplugs this go around because with three guys over 50, then they rattled it enough to where there was no ice on the top of the tent the next morning.
That's funny,
They took care of that pretty well.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I've never had much of an issue sleeping out there, and I think it's just because I'm going so much when I'm out there that I basically just crash. I remember the first time when we broke down one elk on the first trip. Man, I don't know if I've ever been so tired in my life. It was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I got back and just passed out. Woke up the next morning at 5 a.m. ready to go. but we spent day one, which would have been Thursday up there, just getting everything ready. Friday rolled around. We had some time to scout. We didn't really do a whole lot of scouting just because of the snow that was on the ground, but it was pretty apparent when we were out there that there was not going to be a lot of animals. The way that our camp sat, we sat kind of down in a bowl. So everywhere that we went was a little bit higher elevation than where we were at. And there was two, they called it Baldy and Little Baldy. I'm not sure if what you guys have called it out there, but our guides called it Big Baldy and Little Baldy. And it was basically just the top of the peak where the tree stopped was Big Baldy. And then there was another area that was just a little wide open that they called Little Baldy. And we tried to get out there. In between, there's a nice timber patch. When we were out there the 2 years previous, there was a ton of tracks. It was almost like a super highway rolling through there. And that Friday when we were looking around, we didn't see a single track. I mean, there wasn't even a squirrel track up there.
Yeah.
So we kind of just got our bearings on Friday, set to start the season on Saturday, and it was worse weather conditions Saturday than it was when we first got up there. I mean, there wasn't really snowing, but we had 30-mile-an-hour winds and temperatures that were in the negatives, and it was just trying to sit up there and not have any relief from the wind is just brutal. I mean,
it's so
absolutely
awful.
brutal. And that's basically what it was for the next 4 or 5 days. There was 2 or 3 days that might have gotten into the 20s, but everything that we saw, we found this great big rock cropping that sat down and looked over the sage flats and the mountain, which was just a beautiful view. But we could definitely tell there was a spot about 2,000 or 3,000 feet in elevation below us where the elk were just huddled up together. And if I was a marathon runner or someone's in a little bit better shape, I might have thought about taking a poke down there. But the thought of having to haul all that animal back up 2,000, 3,000 feet in elevation just was not in the cards. So
did they leave any horses with you, or is that like not part of the service? Like,
no,
they just drop you off and you're on your own and they pick you up.
They dropped us off and left us. Yeah.
Okay.
They bring the horses back. The first year that we did it back in 2019, they brought the horses so we could haul everything back down as far as meat and stuff that we harvested. But while we were up there, we were on our own. And I when I wrote the article that you were talking about, it was kind of the surreal feeling of being up there. I mean, it's unlike a lot of people try to ask me to explain what it's like to be up there on the mountain, and it's not something you can really explain unless you've been up there and experienced it yourself. It's a surreal feeling, because as miserable as it was and as uncomfortable as I was, there was something so beautiful about it. I mean, once we found that rock cropping, we got to see the sage flats and the sunsets and the sunrises. It's so quiet. I mean, I can't explain how quiet it was, and as sucky as it was a beautiful time too. I had a great time. None of us got anything. Actually, the one chance that we had, I had a cow tag and everybody else had a bull tag. I was with my cousin and we were trying to get to some higher elevation. And as we were walking up there, we heard something stomping through the snow. So we both stopped, and there was one cow elk that was on a trot coming back down actually towards our camp. So we set up and she wasn't stopping. I tried to bleat at her and she wouldn't stop. And all of a sudden I see a horse coming up, and it was our guide who was going to the next camp farther from us to assess and see what it was like, to see if it had ripped apart the tent and destroyed that camp as well. So he spooked the only elk I saw the entire trip.
God.
I was heartbreaking. And that was like day 4. I was already miserable. I'm like, this is my chance. And I'm out 10 miles in the middle of nowhere, and I get an elk bumped by the only other person out in the middle of nowhere. So it was kind of heartbreaking, but it was fun. I mean, it really was.
Yeah, man, I've been on plenty of unsuccessful hunts, and they all have a very special place in my heart because it's a beautiful place, man. It's a beautiful place. It's pushing yourself beyond what you probably thought you were capable of doing, and it's just a hell of a good time. So getting out there elk hunting, even when you don't have success, is still better than any day at the office, right?
It really is, man. It's so different too, being in the area in the world that we are in Iowa. To be out there and to see that kind of country. I mean, I think I'm in a rural area here in Iowa, but you get out there, I mean, it's wild. It really is. There's no other way to put it. It is just a wild area, and it's really cool to see that.
Yeah, that's cool that you guys stuck it through with that weather, man. I can't say that whether or not I'd make that same decision if I walked up on that tent with it just being ripped down, but that's pretty cool that you guys went out there and put in the miles regardless of how it turned out. So
yeah, we had the option once we got up there. The guide gave us the option to go down to a lower elevation camp that was kind of in more of a timbered area. And we contemplated it, but we had such good luck in the previous trip up at the spot that we were, and just the remoteness of what it was. We all just kind of decided that we wanted to test our luck. And the way it worked out, we didn't get an elk. Nobody there. There was another guy that went out with us. He did a guided hunt. He got a cow. But one of the ranch hands that was there, I've kept in touch over the years. He's actually a guy from Iowa as well. So we keep in touch pretty often. He went out and did 4th season the same year that we did. And the way it worked was, when we were there, we were at about 11,000 feet in elevation, and all the elk were about 8,000. For whatever reason, when he did 4th season, it switched. He hunted at 8,000, 9,000 feet, and all the elk, he was sending me Snapchats. All the elk were at 10,000 plus elevation on the bald area, the little big baldy area that we were in. I don't know how it flipped, because there was still a ton of snow on the ground, but the moment you think that the animal, they surprise you every time.
Yeah, I mean, I would never would have guessed that, but who knows? Maybe that is the area where the wolves are coming in. So who knows? Maybe some wolves.
That was a hot topic when we were out there. I remember. So we did our first hunt in 2019, and they had just found like a lone wolf a track. Like, one farmer was talking. There was rumors that there was a wolf around, and by the time we had got there in 2020, there was a pretty established pack there, and I think it had between 7 or 8 distinct wolves that were there. Actually, the ranch hand that was there got a really cool shot on his spotting scope. He was watching a moose in the sage flats, and all of a sudden the moose took off, and then 7 or 8 little black specks followed it. And they think it's that wolf pack chasing a wolf. It's pretty wild out there. I think the week after we got back was the first confirmed cattle kill by a wolf.
And they've taken a couple of dogs now too.
Have they?
It's not good. Yeah, and that area it got so many moose, man. This last season we were there. I think over the course of a 4-day hunt, we saw probably like 27 moose, and who knows if it's the same or not. But like everywhere we went, we'd see moose, and that's not going to be like that for much longer if those wolves really start to multiply, which they will. I think they can, like, they grow by 40%. Like, their packs can grow by 40% year over year. It's crazy.
It's so weird to hear about that, because I mean, I can't really talk on it because I'm in an area of the world where there's really not a ton of wolf activity, or ever has been. It's cool from my point of view to see the reintroduction of some of those wolves into these habitats, but I could see just how reckless and how much damage they can do. I mean, I don't know what the population of elk's going to be like the next time we go out there. I think we're set to do a muzzleloader hunt in 2024. But if they're going to be killing cattle and taking moose and taking elk, I mean, it's on one hand, it's really cool to see the population reintroduced, but at what cost? what's going to be the result.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm right there with you. I don't mind the wolves coming back on their own. I don't think we should really have a hand in it, even though we had a pretty big hand in removing them. Either way, we're getting off topic, Ryan. That's not why we're here. That's not
right.
That's not why we're here. We want to hear some more stories.
Yeah.
So that was a good one, man. And it's funny. Often people on this podcast tell stories where they do not have success, because success is one thing, harvesting an animal, filling the freezer, but it's the struggle that people really remember. So thanks for sharing that one with us, man.
Yes.
But what else you got? Give us another one. Set the stage again.
So I'll go back to our first trip. So our second trip absolutely sucked. Our first trip was an absolute success, at least on my end. My dad and I both harvested a bull, both of our firsts. We went out for the very first time in 2019, same unit, same camp. And when you go out there for the first time, it's an absolute, mind fuck. Coming from the flat land that I do to go out there and be at 11,000 feet in elevation is just a totally different world. Yeah. So we got out there that Friday. We did some scouting before the season started, and we just saw a super highway coming through the area that we were going to be in. The same super highway that we thought was going to be there on the second trip was there in full force on the first. Still pretty brutally cold. The nights got down to about -10, -15, but the days got up into the 30s, 40s, and then there was a couple of days in the 50s and 60s. But
is this still second rifle? Same
this
season?
Is still second. Yep. Okay. Yep. So we get out there, we do some scouting. Opening morning comes, and I go sit in a spot that my uncle was just bound and determined that there's going to be an elk come to me. So there's a pretty heavy updraft coming from the base of the mountain up, and it's pretty cold at this point, and I'm sitting facing the wind right now. And he set me up in this rock cropping, looking down into a little gully timber cut. And I got about 20 minutes into that sit, and I'm like, fuck this. I can't feel my toes at this point. I'm so fucking cold. I flip around and I sit on the backside of the rock cropping to get out of the wind, thinking, if something does come up from behind me, I should be able to hear it, or at least I'll be able to be hidden at some capacity. And lo and behold, 5 minutes later, here comes a cow elk, and she comes from my left shoulder and walks to about 35, 40 yards right in front of me. And then she's followed by a calf and another cow. And they stand there for 2 or 3 minutes, and that wind is rushing so fast that she whiffs me pretty quick, and she starts taking off. But I didn't know was behind the rock cropping was my bull that I had shot. And he was standing there watching the 2 cows and the calf. And so they both take off, and I hear him kind of start to trot. And in one fluid motion, I saw he had horns, pulled up my rifle and shot, and shit myself. I thought that I had ruined it. He was close enough to where there was nothing but brown in the scope. And it happened so fast to where I didn't even have time to think about it. By the time
they shot him in the ass, man, shot him in vitals. You have no idea.
Yeah, I had no idea. I didn't even see where I had shot. At that point, I was shaking from being cold and shaking from so much adrenaline that I couldn't even think straight. So what's the first thing that I do is I called my dad, who was up there hunting with us. And I'm like, I'm so mad at myself. I don't even know what to think at this point. I just shot at an elk, and it had horns, and I don't know what to do. And he goes, well, go look and see if you can find blood. All right. That's probably a good place to start.
Real quick. How far was this elk from you, and what variable scope were you using that it was all brown?
Well, when I finally walked it off, he was like 25 yards away.
Okay.
And he was running. Brown. Yeah. He was running away from me. And I think I had it on like a 3 or 4 power. I wasn't real scoped in, but at the same time, he was just that close to where I couldn't really tell. So the way that I was sitting, the rock cropping kind of overlooked a little cedar patch that crested on it's weird to explain, but there was the cedar patch kind of sat on a high point, and then there was a smaller bowl just down from where the elk were running. So I walked to his tracks. I found a small speck of blood, and I was sick to myself. I was like, well, here I am, opening morning. I'll waste my one shot. I draw blood. I'm done. Because it's not enough blood to warrant. If I was back home and I saw that much blood, I would pretty well deduce that there's not going to be much more. So I walk it off and I get to the top of where the bull started. And I look down and I just see a patch of brown laying about 15 yards away. And then I kind of looked around. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way that this just happened. And lo and behold, he was so close and I hit him directly in the lungs that everything was just kept internal. All the blood. I mean, if I wouldn't have seen him, I wouldn't have been able to track him because there was absolutely no blood other than a few minor specks.
What caliber were you shooting?
A 7 mag, my grandpa's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not a rifle you want to take at 25 yards. I mean, it just, there was nothing to hit and I hit nothing but lungs and it just went right through. And he was from where I was sitting to where he laid, he was maybe 40, 50 yards away. I mean, he was not very far, but it was an absolute great. I can't even explain the feeling that when I got up there and found that elk. It's just the biggest animal that I've ever taken in my life. I mean, we have a lot of whitetails here in Iowa, but they're just another animal out there.
But yeah, man, elk are a totally different beast. Even a small bull is 4+ whitetail.
Yeah. And that, I didn't really realize that until I stood next to one of these things. I remember walking up to it and thinking, this is like, 4 whitetails packed into one massive animal. And I remember walking up to it and I was pretty speechless for a bit. I figured if I ever shot an elk out there, I'd call my dad and I'd bring him in and we'd sit there and we'd, him and haw and celebrate everything. But I think I spent 30 minutes just kind of sitting and soaking it in. It was one of those things that you want to do so badly and you build yourself up so much. And then once it finally happens and the way that it happened so quickly, it was such a wave of emotion. It was, it hit like a ton of bricks and it was such a cool experience. The only regret that I had is I do wish that I was sitting with my dad when I took mine. But I was able to sit with him on his, and that's a whole other fun story that I can tell when this one wraps up. But it was so cool. It happened so fast and it's so hard to explain because to tell the story in real time, it all happened in about less than a minute. I mean, by the time that I saw that cow to where that bull was running to me I didn't even have time to think. I just pulled the rifle up and shot. And thank goodness my grandpa's rifle is dead nuts. It would have been hard to miss at 25 yards, but I'm glad his rifle was pretty well dead on.
Yeah, man. Yeah. No, I've killed one elk. It's actually the first thing I ever killed when I started hunting. And so I shot it with the muzzleloader. I've told this story before, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. I'll let you know which episode. I'm drawing a blank, but I'll let you know later. But when I shot it with the muzzleloader at about 60 yards, got up, I didn't know what to do. I'm just like panicking, reloading my muzzleloader, like dropping all my sabots and my black powder everywhere, just being like, oh God, what do I? So and then I just ran to where I shot it, not thinking I shouldn't do that kind of stuff and spook it. I really had no idea what I was doing. Which funny is while I was reloading all stuff, like a truck drove by because I was standing on a road. Right. And they're like, what's this idiot doing? Either way, I jump up and I get there and I look down this game trail and I'm like, I know this is where it was standing when I shot. And I look down and there's that bull and it just stood there. I could tell I was a long shot and it's hard. It's real hard to put down something that big. I've killed a couple things since and nothing quite compares to dropping an elk. And I sat there and watched that thing, slowly die about 40 minutes. So it's heavy.
It is. And I'm kind of glad that you bring that up because on the same trip when my dad shot his elk, he doesn't necessarily love telling the story, but it's just kind of funny the way everything happened. Same trip. I shot mine opening morning at like 9 a.m. So I had the entire rest of the trip to basically fuck off on a mountain. So I was hiking, I was going out, I was having a good time. I was splitting firewood, hunting with my dad. And it came up to be Tuesday morning. It was a 6-day hunt. So Tuesday morning rolls around. I'm sitting with my dad that morning and he's cow calling, and a elk is just a satellite elk or satellite bull is just bugling his ass off from below. I mean, just on a string. Every time my dad would cow call, this bull would respond, and he came up on a string. So where we were sitting, we were looking down the mountain, and there was a small clearing in the timber that we were pretty positive he was going to come up in. And I was sitting on a rock just below my dad. So I was sitting on a rock just below my dad, and he was sitting just up. I mean, he was right behind me, but he was sitting up on my left shoulder, essentially. And we were both looking to our left, figuring that this bull was going to come up through the timber and not into the opening. We were hoping he would come into the opening, but we were figuring he was going to take the most difficult route. So he kept bugling. Dad kept cow calling, bugle, and then it got quiet for about 10 minutes. And we both kept looking into the timber to see maybe if he was just going to come up and creep up and see what the situation was. And all of a sudden he popped out into the opening, and he is just a gorgeous bull. I mean, he's a mounter. He's a nice bull, and he's sitting at about 75 yards. And at this point, we weren't expecting him to come up that way. So the way he had my dad had his shooting sticks, and his rifle was pointing the opposite direction. So we made the quick decision to use my shoulder as his shooting sticks. So he doesn't love them when I tell him that story, but I do every time I shoot a shotgun now. My ear kind of rings for about 10 minutes. But his first shot at him took out his left shoulder, and the bull froze and just stood there for a minute and didn't move. So we thought, well, maybe he missed. So we took another shot, and for whatever reason, as soon as he shot, that bull dropped his head, and my dad actually shot his jaw. So when we finally came up on the bull, his jaw was only held by the skin on his cheek. But that second shot, he still froze. He would not go down. So we shot a third time, took out the right front shoulder, and he still froze. He just stood there and just would not.
Damn.
He wouldn't run. He wouldn't fall. He just stayed. And we gave it like 5 minutes. I'm like, you don't need to put another bullet in this animal. He's not going anywhere. So we gave it about 5 minutes, and he kind of started to stumble a little bit, but again, stood and froze. So my dad shot a fourth time, hit him right behind the shoulder. And at this point, it was enough to give him a kick to where he kind of stumbled down into the trees just a little ways. So we walked up on him, and this animal was still alive. I mean, they are tough sons of bitches. So we finally put one round in the heart, and he died quickly after that. But it took 5 shots for this thing to go down. And it was just, if my dad listens to this, I love you a ton, but he had an excellent taxidermist fix his jaw because his jaw was so fucked up that I don't know how that thing was still dangling there by the time we got done. It was, but it was such a surreal experience because it was my first trip going with him, and it was my first trip out west elk hunting. And he had been going since I was born in 95, and he had been going ever since. So it's been at that point, 25 years that he had been going. And that was his first time taking a bull. And I was so happy that I was able to be right next to him with it. I don't love that he shot on my shoulder and kind of and affected the earring a little bit, but it makes for a hell of a good story. And he was able to take a really cool animal.
You know what? It's funny. You're the second person to have their father shoot off their shoulder. Casey McAllister just told the story similar. Whitetail in Oklahoma, but his dad did the same thing in episode 31. so that's pretty damn funny.
He hates when I say it that way, but it's a pretty integral part of the storyline. You know, it's important. It does. It forces me when we're sitting in the duck blind. I definitely have to have my hearing protection in. Otherwise, I'm not going to hear shit for the rest of the day.
Yeah. So. Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah. What caliber was he shooting, man? That's crazy that it took 5 rounds. I mean, if they're blowing out the shoulders, like, I don't know why that animal's standing. He just must have been, I will say, when they get fired up on adrenaline, Like sometimes they just don't even know,
That's the only thing I could think of, because he came up on a string. I mean, as soon as he cow called that morning, he came straight. He responded and came straight up the mountain. I mean, you could just hear every time he called. He was closer. It was I don't know.
I believe it, man.
But he's a tough son of a bitch. I give him all the props in the world.
I believe it. So that elk that I was telling you about, I looked it up. Episode 8 is when I go over that story with Gabriel saying Don, because we both told stories because we each killed half an elk. So those are our half elk stories. But my brother-in-law shot that elk with a 50 caliber muzzleloader, right? At maybe 10 yards, lung, heart, lung. I then shot that elk downhill, going uphill. So lung, spine. And so this elk, I then watched it die for 45 minutes. I didn't know to send another round. I was like, it was my first time I'd ever killed anything. I wasn't a hunter before. I was like, it's been shot. I see lung blood. It's standing there. I don't need to worry about anything. I'll just sit here and wait. And it was hard for me. But like when we took him apart and gutted him out, his heart was gelatin. Like there was nothing there. There's nothing there. And he was on his feet for no kidding, 35, 45 minutes.
Man.
So
yeah, they are
tough critters.
I thought whitetail in this area were tough. Man, those things are another beast. It was impressive. It was absolutely impressive.
Yeah, when we skinned mine down, I literally was able to retrieve my sabot from the spine.
No kidding.
Pop this thing right out. So I went from below up through a lung into the spine. It was gnarly critters, man. They're tough. They're super tough.
They are.
Yeah, that's why it's like I hear about archery guys. I become an archery hunter. I haven't killed anything but a turkey with my bow, but I'm working on it. But I hear about guys dropping it in elk and it doesn't go 30 yards. I'm like, I guess that just being them completely unaware that you're there. I don't know what it is, but then I hear guys. I know with 250 round caliber or 250 caliber shots into an elk, or your dad's 5. Like, who knows? Yeah. That's why shot placement is important, man.
Yeah, I'm not much of a bow hunter. I really never. I've bow hunted, but I've never taken anything with a bow. But yeah, seeing some of the way these guys go out elk hunting, just the experience that I had. I mean, my one shot was a double lung shot, and I think I was just absolutely. I didn't take any skill into that. I was just luckier than shit. But seeing my dad's bull take 5 shots and still stand there and look at us, yeah. I thought, how can one arrow take any of these animals down? I mean, they're just
right.
They're just tough. I mean, they're a different breed.
Yeah. And 4 of your dad's shots definitely being immediate kill shots. Like, who knows?
Oh, yeah.
The jaw one would have killed it. I mean, maybe eventually, but the other four definitely would have done it.
Yeah. The jaw one was, that was one of those. I've hunted a lot. I've killed a lot of things in my life. That one that made your stomach churn a little bit, especially because I watched it in real time. As soon as he shot, the elk ducked, and it's like watching a movie. His jaw just gave out, and it was.
Does he ever blame you for moving? Like he's like,
"Oh,
you
yeah,
shouldn't have moved.
You shouldn't have moved your shoulder. You should have crested your shoulder up a little bit to hug my rifle barrel a little bit more." Yeah. Oh yeah. I've gotten it all.
Your fault. It's all your fault.
Yeah.
Man. So.
That's why if you're listening to this, find a damn good taxidermist, because he was able to find one, and you would have never known there was no jaw on that elk.
No shit. Could you send me a picture of that elk? I'd love to see what the taxidermist has done and like see if it's like.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that picture.
Yeah.
Awesome, man.
It's so cool that I mean, it just to attest to the animal too is, so he got that one a shoulder mount done on it, and I have whitetails in my basement. And you stick those things up on the wall and they look like a deer. He had to put this thing 3/4 of the way down on the floor because his antlers were touching the ceiling. I mean, it's just, they're big critters.
That's awesome. He ever get it scored?
Nope. He's just happy to have one.
Yeah.
He probably should have though. He probably should have.
Maybe someday you can do it for him or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
But, yeah, one thing I'll say, I don't know who's listening, right? But none of us want to take 5 shots. I know your dad's shots were good shots. We're just trying to speak to the toughness of the animal here, right? Like,
yeah,
we've all done there and had to put a couple rounds into an animal to make sure that it's as painless as possible. But that's the nature of hunting. It's still better.
It really is. It really is. Even when you take 2 clean shots, I mean, it's sometimes it takes a little bit for them. I mean, I remember the first buck that I ever shot, the first whitetail I ever shot here in Iowa. It was first season shotgun, and it was running towards me, and I shot it high. So I think I shot it just below the spine, and it wasn't able to run, but it wasn't able to die. So it just sat there and it just groaned, and it made those just haunting noises. And I'm 10 or 12 years old when I do this. And it's something to where even at that age, it's still stuck with me now. And I still remember the sounds that it made. And I remember we had to come up and put it out of its misery. I mean, we had to dispatch it in a quick way so it didn't sit there and suffer. And
Yeah.
I remember that process of shooting that animal. And I do remember my dad telling me right then is, if you do make that bad shot, make sure you dispatch it as quickly as you can. If you have that capabilities, it's a humane thing to do. And it's the right thing to do. So we definitely preach on it, and it's inevitable. It's going to happen.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Shot. It's just how you react to some of those situations really helps. It just shows how much you respect the animal in that sense.
Yeah. And keeping your head in it, right? Your dad put additional shots in. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
I didn't even know when I shot mine. I just sat there and watched. So it's too bad. I regret it. But also the animal's heart was gone. So I'm not sure if he was all there. It might've just been standing on pure who knows?
Yeah.
But good, man. Cool. Well, let's give your father a break here. Do you got another story for us?
I do, actually. I do a little bit more recently. This one involves a guy that's involved with Midwest Outdoor Chasers, Luke. His name, Luke Allman. And also my wife, my lovely wife, McKenna. We had a really successful 2022 turkey season. I was able to get a double turkey with Luke, and I was able to get a double turkey. And my wife's first animal she's ever hunted. She had a successful turkey hunt this last spring. We went out, and the way the seasons run here in Iowa is we've got 4 seasons. You're able to get tags for 2 of the seasons, but they can't be consecutive. So I think we hunted first and third, or second and fourth. I can't remember which one I did with McKenna. Anywho, we sat at a spot of a family friend of ours that's pretty populated with turkeys. It's got a healthy population on it. We went out the first morning. Luke and I went out. We sat kind of at the edge of a timber below a terrace. And as soon as we got out of the truck, gobbles. I mean, it was just they were lit and they were ready to go. They were on fire. So we get down. We get the blind set up, and we have Ben, our videographer and cameraman, with us. So he's getting everything on camera, and he was able to get this hunt on camera, which was it's super cool. We get set up, and then all of a sudden the goblin kind of stops for a little bit. Probably about an hour goes by, and we really don't hear much. And then all of a sudden we get 2 toms that about 300 yards away. They don't gobble much, but the way the terrace sat is all you could see is just a little redhead popping up and down behind the terrace. And about 300 yards, you could just see every time we'd cluck at them, their redheads would pop up, and they'd look and they'd see our decoy. So Luke set up the decoy with some fishing line. We couldn't get the gobblers to come in with just the call. They were too skeptical about what was going on. So we had a pretty boy decoy set up, full strut. And as soon as Luke moved that fishing line and turned that decoy 300 yards, those birds came in on a beeline. I mean, they closed the gap between 300 yards and us in probably 30 seconds. I mean, they were ready. They were hot to trot and ready to fight. So once those turkeys came in, it was kind of a mad scramble because we weren't expecting them to come in. We both had our guns semi-ready, but we weren't expecting those things to come in as quickly as they had. So it was kind of a mad scramble for 3 guys and 1 blind to get all set up with two shotguns and a camera. So as soon as they came in, they went straight for the decoy, and they started beating the decoy up, and then they both scattered, and we were able to get 2 clean shots off. So we were able to take our first double together, which was so cool to do. I've turkey hunted a lot in my life, but being able to shoot a bird with your buddy at the same time is kind of a rite of passage a little bit. It's
pretty cool.
It's a fun little memory to share. But a couple weeks later, I take my wife out for her first hunt. She'd never been hunting before. I took her out for the turkey hunt, sat up in the same spot. Turkeys came in behind us. We set up thinking they were going to come in the same way that they did on the previous hunt. They did almost a 360 on us. They kind of circled the blind and didn't give us a real clean shot up until they got just to our like back left. They saw the decoy, and then two jakes came out. I don't know if they were just curious or what, but she was able to get a clean shot, and then the gunshot from hers kind of spooked one of them into an opening to where I was able to get a shot on one. So I was able to get a double with her as well, and share that moment with her. So it was a really fun, successful spring turkey hunt this last year.
That's awesome, man. That's cool, super cool. Reminds me, I have a buddy that I went turkey hunting in Texas, and I've told the story of my turkey, but I never told the story of his turkeys, which afterwards. So he'd never turkey hunted. He'd never hunted. And I was like, yeah, come along. I know this a little bit. So let me try and show you. I put my turkey down, monster gobbler, like super happy with it. It's actually with my bow, only animal I've ever killed with my bow. So couldn't have been
impressive.
Happier.
That's super impressive.
Yeah, I almost cut his head off, which means I think I missed and got lucky. But neither here nor there, right? But he was like, okay, well, I still have my tags. And in Texas, we were in Texas, and I think you get 3 or 4 turkeys on your hunting license when you do it in Texas. And so I'm like, yeah, just keep my decoys, keep the blind, keep everything here. Like you come back in the evening and do your evening hunt. I'm going to run home. So he texts me later, and he's got 3 birds down. So he went back and he started calling, and I gave him my little slate call. So he's, tip, 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 with my slate call and all that. And the birds came in, and he fired his shotgun and took 2 of them. And then the other one just stood there, and he's like, well, I guess I'll shoot the other one too. So he shot 3 toms. None of them, I mean, they're borderline jakes. Like they're all small birds, but I was like, bro, I'm not even, I was like, from a legality standpoint, you might've done something that no one's ever done before. It's like maybe 2 states, do you have enough tags? And then the fact of just 3 birds in 2 shots, like that's insane. But
man, that's impressive.
He was eating good. And now he's since then moved to Montana and has become addicted to hunting. So I gave him some of that good stuff, and he can't get enough of it.
Yeah, I'm hoping as we grow with our business, I'm hoping that we're able to get out west a little bit more, because it's, we spend a lot of time here in the Midwest hunting just about everything, but you're kind of maxed out with what you can get and what hunts you can do. I mean, the pinnacle of hunting around here is whitetail. I mean, and we're very blessed with pigs around here. I mean, they're very, very nice whitetail deer, but it's kind of the peak.
Real quick, Ryan, I don't want to interrupt, but you say pigs. Does that mean big deer, or do you actually have pigs?
No, we don't have. Sorry, we don't have any pigs here. When I say pig, I mean a big buck.
Gotcha. Okay, you said that twice, and I was like, I had no idea there were wild hogs.
I wish we had the wild hog problem around here, because I would love to have the hunts.
Yeah.
But yeah, a big whitetail I call pigs. Just that's just fun. But it's kind of the pinnacle of hunting around here. So I mean, you have turkey hunts in the spring, you have your deer hunts in the fall. But other than that, I mean, as far as game, I mean, you have your critters, you have predator calling. We could do coyote hunts, we do squirrel hunts and rabbit hunts. But man, being able to get the company to where we want it, to be able to go out west and to start doing some of these big mountain hunts, it's a work in progress. But I've being able to do it 2 times now. I've been truly blessed, and being able to get out there is awesome. I have a lot of guys that I'm friends with that have hunted their entire life around here. And I'm like, I tell them, you think you know what hunting is until you get out there, and it's nothing. It's one thing to get out of your truck in the morning, hunt in a cornfield next to somebody's, pasture ground or outside of your grandparents' house. It's another thing to go out there and be the only soul within miles around. It's a different breed out there.
And put on 12 miles and not see a damn thing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's the worst part.
Yeah. Well, but it's good though. I enjoy it.
It's worth it. It's very much worth it.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. Like, I haven't done much whitetail hunting. And so it's interesting to hear from a whitetail hunter that like still the Western big game is kind of this Shangri-La of hunting because it is different.
Yes.
I just moved to Texas, so I'm kind of going to start dabbling in the whitetail stuff a little bit more.
Yep.
I think that all of it is wonderful and amazing. But I do think that those big game Western hunts are just something different, man. Something different.
They are. They really are. I mean, it's a little bit mysterious too. I mean, we have a lot of public ground where we are. I mean, it's very rural, a lot of farm ground. So there's a lot of deer around, but it's nothing compared to the wide open spaces that are out there. It's just and all the critters that it hides. I mean, there's moose, elk, mountain lion, all sorts of different things, and it's just like going into a whole nother world from where we are. It's
for sure.
It's pretty cool.
For sure, man. Well, Ryan, this has been fun. You got any more for us, or you want to wrap it up here?
I have a whole host of other stories. My big game hunts are kind of the ones that I could tell and have kind of a storyline. The rest of them, they involve a lot of bullshit and my buddies and my family, and they're memories that are fun to tell around a fire. I've done a ton of different things. I've done some deep sea fishing in Florida and in Hawaii. I was just out in Hawaii in August and was able to take a mahi, I guess you would call it double. Luke, the friend that got the double turkey with me earlier this spring, him and his wife and me and my wife went out to Hawaii together. We did some deep sea fishing. We were able to get a mahi both together. We've done some deep sea fishing. We do a lot of bow fishing here in Iowa. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but down in Texas is kind of the pinnacle of bow fishing. Getting down there to shoot some alligator gar is definitely a goal of mine that I'd love to get down there and see them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got so many memories and so many stories that it's a whole lifetime of memories that just been compiled. And I'm just happy that hunting and the outdoors have been such a big part of my life that, not only can I make these memories and start to build a business on, it's something that I can share with people like you, with friends and families and communities like this. It's humbling to see how just a simple, hunt can impact so many different things.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's cool. I have not hunted as long as you, and I'm filling up my book of stories, but you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It creates memories, even the good, the bad, the ugly. Your friend being an idiot. Like, I'm going to tell this. I'm not even going to tell. No, I'm going to tell this story. My buddy's been worried that I've been to tell this story for a long time. And here we go. And so we're elk hunting. We're archery elk hunting. We're glassing this hillside. We're just looking for elk. And I'm looking over my buddy, and he's just like got his pants undone, and he is halfway up his forearm down his pants, like just messing around down there. And I'm like, what are you doing? And his answer created his nickname, right? So he was like, well, he just looks at me in the eyes and goes, man, I just got this little pricker. And he meant like a sticker burr or like something sharp or, something poking him. But he used the exact words is, man, I got this little pricker. And I was just like, okay. Yeah. I was like, I think I know what you mean, but that ain't ever going away. And he's been worried I've been to tell that story now. And we're episode 35. There it is. There it is. I'm not going to say his name, but my hunting buddy is Little Pricker. And it always will be. That's funny. And that's what hunting is about, is those moments of just like, I'm never gonna forget my buddy fishing around in his pants. Like, never will. So
those are the stories and the nicknames. I have one like that, and my uncle. It's a very funny joke that my uncle and I say between the two of us now. But we were doing a walleye fishing trip up in South Dakota. We've done a bunch of them over the years. We got up there, and for whatever reason, he got lights out drunk. I mean, blackout drunk. He drank so much Tito's on the boat that he popped the little stopper glug glug thing on the tip of the vodka bottle, a handle of Tito's, and he had 3/4 of it gone within an hour. Nobody, for whatever reason, nobody was paying attention to him. And he's a very self-composed guy. he's kind of a hard-nosed dude, but he's very self-composed, but he got lights out drunk. And there was 4 of us on the boat. It was my dad, my uncle, Rod, who was on the elk trip with us, and myself. We were fishing on all 4 corners of the boat. And for whatever reason, he thought it was hilarious to start the boat motor, crank the wheel, throttle it up, and get us all tangled up and just do circles out in the middle of the lake. And it got to the point where my dad was going to fight him and all sorts of stuff. So the ongoing joke was he got his boat taken away. So anytime you drink too much in our hunting party, you get your boat taken away. So if you're in the shed, or if you're out drinking, and if you just got done with the hunt, you drink too much, you get your boat taken away. So it was one of those things where, like, it just fun little memories that just kind of last a lifetime. And it's happy to be able to do it.
Yeah, man. I need to find a way to get more of those little gems, like the little pricker, like getting your boat taken away. I need to maybe start prompting people to have like one little like one-liner stories, because those ones always make me smile. So
they do.
All right, Ryan, man, this was fun. This was a lot of fun, man. Again, thank you for putting up with my rescheduling while I moved all around the country and back and forth and the holidays.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Why don't we sign off here by kind of letting the people know again where they can find you, your Instagram, your company's Instagram, website, whatever you want to share, hit us with it.
Yeah. So we, our company's name is Midwest Outdoor Chasers. We have MidwestOutdoorChasers.com. That's going to have all of our content, merchandise. And we do a weekly article that myself and then Noah Bertelson, who's also on the team, we both put out an article every week, just kind of trying to highlight different aspects of the hunting and fishing world. We've got a YouTube channel, Midwest Outdoor Chasers. It's on the website. We've got our, on the YouTube channel, we've got our hunting videos, but we also have our Primal Plate series, to where we're putting all the wild game on the grill and in the oven. We show all different kinds of recipes that we like to highlight. But yeah, you can find us there on Instagram. We're Midwest Outdoor Chasers as well. We really love to highlight the area of the world that we live in, and the luck, as lucky as we are to be able to hunt and fish and enjoy it with each other.
Live the dream, man. Cool.
The dream.
All right. I will put links to all of that stuff in the show notes, like usual.
Awesome.
So if anyone wants to just make it nice and easy, just go down there and click. But that's it, man. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on.
I really appreciate you coming on. Let me chat, and I love being able to share this stuff, man. I'm happy that someone like you who's pretty, still fairly new to it, getting his feet wet. I'm so happy that you're so welcoming to the community. It's awesome to see people come in and love it just as much as we all do.
Yeah, man. It's been amazing. Obviously I'm reaching out to all sorts of random people from this podcast, and everyone could not be nicer and more excited to tell their little stories. So it's this has proved a lot easier than I thought it would be. All I got to do is shut up and not ask dumb questions. So Ryan, thanks again, man.
Michael, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, man.
Of course. All right, guys, that's it. Another couple stories in the books. I want to thank Ryan, of course, for coming on the podcast. I hope you all enjoyed his stories as much as I did chatting with him. Make sure you follow him on Instagram, specifically his media company, which is Midwest_Outdoor_Chasers. And I'll put links to all of his stuff in the show notes, so you'll find it all right there. And then, of course, don't forget to follow us while you're over there. So that's huntingstories_official. And then there is homework, as usual. Get out there and share this podcast with more folks. We want to hear more stories. We want more people to hear the stories. And the only way we are going to do that is word of mouth. So that being said, guys, thank you again for tuning in. Ryan, thank you again for sharing your stories. Now, you guys know what to do. Get out there and make some stories of your own. Thank you.